كانت فتاة بريطانية عادية، وإن كانت من أصول أرستقراطية عريقة، ثم وفي أيام معدودة صارت أميرة ويلز، وزوجة وريث عرش الإمبراطورية التي لا تغيب عنها الشمس. لم تكن ديانا مستعدة لذلك التحول الكبير في حياتها العادية جدا، وهو ما يفسر عدم التزامها لاحقا بالبروتوكول الملكي العقيم، لا سيما أن ذلك تزامن مع تركيز وسائل الإعلام على حياتها الشخصية والعملية.
At the age of 19, you always think you're prepared for everything, and you think you have the knowledge of what's coming ahead. But although I was daunted at the prospect at the time, I felt I had the support of my husband-to-be. I wasn't daunted, and I'm not daunted by the responsibilities that role creates. It was a challenge. It is a challenge.
لذا بات من الطبيعي أن يكون تصورها عن الحياة الزوجية بسيطا وعاديا جدا. لم تفكر ديانا بأنها ستكون الأميرة زوجة الأمير، بل رأت أنها ستكون ديانا جون سبنسر زوجة تشارلز فيليب مونباتن.
I think like any marriage, especially when you've had divorced parents like myself, you'd want to try even harder to make it work, and you don't want to fall back into a pattern that you've seen happen in your own family. I desperately wanted to work. I desperately loved my husband, and I wanted to share everything together. And I thought that we were a very good team.
اعتقد كثيرون أن ديانا كانت تنظر لهذا الزواج من زاوية أنها ستصبح الملكة في نهاية المطاف، باعتبارها زوجة ولي العهد البريطاني الأمير تشارلز، ولكن ذلك الاعتقاد كان سطحيا وخاطئا تماما.
As for becoming queen, was never at the forefront of my mind when I married my husband. It was a long way off that thought.
المشكلة الأساسية كانت في الصحف ووسائل الإعلام التي تستثمر في حياة المشاهير الخاصة قبل العامة، وبالطبع بعد الزواج الملكي صارت ديانا حديث الجميع، سواء داخل المملكة المتحدة أو خارجها.
The most daunting aspect was the media attention, because my husband and I were told when we got engaged that the media would go quietly, and it didn't. And then when we were married, they said it would go quietly, and it didn't. And then it started to focus very much on me. And I seemed to be on the front of a newspaper every single day, which is an isolating experience. And the higher the media place you, is the bigger the drop. And I was very aware of that.
في البداية لم تستوعب ديانا سبب ذلك التركيز الإعلامي المبالغ فيه والمستمر عليها وحدها، ولكنها سرعان ما تفهمت أن صورتها لا تتصدر الصفحات الأولى من الصحف كل يوم بسبب أعمالها الخيرية، ولكن لأن ذلك هو ما يجعل هذه الصحف تحقق مبيعات جيدة جدا. الناس أحبت ديانا حقا، ولكن وسائل الإعلام استثمرت هذا الحب لصالحها وعلى حساب ديانا ذاتها.
It took a long time to understand why people were so interested in me, but I assumed it was because my husband had done a lot of wonderful work leading up to our marriage and our relationship. But then during the years, you see yourself as a good product that sits on a shelf and sells well, and people make a lot of money out of you. But then here was a situation which hadn't ever happened before in history, in the sense that the media were everywhere. And here was a fairy story that everybody wanted to work, and so it was isolating, but it was also a situation where you couldn't indulge in feeling sorry for yourself. You had to either sink or swim, and you had to learn that very fast.
And what did you do?
I swam. We went to Alice Springs, to Australia. And we went and did a walkabout, and I said to my husband, what do I do now? And he said, go over to the other side and speak to them. I said, I can't, just can't. He said, well, you've got to do it. And he went off and did his bit, and I went off and did my bit. It practically finished me off there and then, and I suddenly realised, I went back to our hotel room and realised the impact that, I had to sort myself out. And we had a 6-week tour, 4 weeks in Australia and 2 weeks in New Zealand, and by the end, when we flew back from New Zealand, I was a different person. I realised the sense of duty, the level of intensity of interest, and the demanding role I now found myself in.
ولذا كان من البديهي أن تشعر ديانا بكم هائل من الضغوط النفسية، ومع الأسف زاد من حدة هذا الشعور أنها لم تحظى بالدعم المعنوي الذي توقعته من زوجها الأمير تشارلز.
Yes, I was very daunted because, as far as I was concerned, I was a fat, chubby 20-year-old, 21-year-old, and I couldn't understand the level of interest.
ولكن لم تنكر ديانا أنها شعرت بالسعادة في المرحلة المبكرة من زواجها، إلا أن وسائل الإعلام كانت تتسبب في إفساد هذا الشعور سريعا، وإن لم تكن على ما يبدو تقصد تحقيق ذلك.
Very much so. But the pressure on us both as a couple with the media was phenomenal and misunderstood by a great many people. We'd be going around Australia, for instance, and all you could hear was, oh, she's on the other side. Now, if you're a man, or my husband, a proud man, you mind about that. You hear it every day for 4 weeks, and you feel low about it, instead of feeling happy and sharing it, which I felt very uncomfortable with, and I felt it was unfair because I wanted to share.
ومع ذلك، وبسبب النظرة السطحية التي يتبناها عقل الجمهور الجمعي، ظن الجميع أن الأميرة ديانا تشعر بالإطراء من وسائل الإعلام التي تهتم بها بشكل خاص دون غيرها من أفراد العائلة المالكة البريطانية.
No, not particularly, because with the media attention came a lot of jealousy. A great deal of complicated situations arose because of that.
ولكن إذا نظرنا إلى سيرة الأميرة ديانا عن كثب، نجد أنها لم تسعى إطلاقا لتكن الأميرة أو حتى الملكة في المستقبل، بل كانت على سجيتها دائما. كانت ديانا دائما على فطرتها دون تصنع أو تكلف منذ ولادتها وحتى مماتها، ولذا هل يمكن تصور أنه كانت لديها أدنى فكرة عن الدور الذي ترغب في القيام به كأميرة ويلز؟
No, I was very confused by which area I should go into. Then I found myself being more and more involved with people who were rejected by society, I'd say drug addicts, alcoholism, battered this, battered that, and I found an affinity there. And I respected very much the honesty I found on that level of people I met, because in hospices, for instance, when people are dying, they're much more open and more vulnerable and much more real than other people, and I appreciated that.
المدهش في الأمر أن القصر بذاته لم يرسم للأميرة ديانا جدول أعمال معين، وعندما وجدت ديانا دورها في العمل الخيري، بات القصر ينظر لها نظرة غيرة واضحة، وكأنه كان لدى القصر تصور معين عن الدور الذي يجب عليها القيام به.
No one sat me down with a piece of paper and said, this is what's expected of you. But there again, I'm lucky enough, the fact that I have found my role, and I'm very conscious of it. And I love being with people. I remember when I used to sit on hospital beds and hold people's hands, people used to be sort of shocked because they said they'd never seen this before. And to me it was quite a normal thing to do. And when I saw the reassurance that an action like that gave, I did it everywhere. And we'll always do that.
وفي صباح يوم الاثنين 21 من يونيو حزيران عام 82 وضعت الأميرة ديانا مولودها الأول الأمير ويليام، وبعدها بعامين فقط وضعت مولودها الثاني الأمير هاري، ولحسن الحظ كان مولودها كلاهما ذكر. فبغض النظر عن أن الأمرين سيان لديها سواء أكان ذكرا أم أنثى، فإنه لم يكن كذلك بالنسبة للعائلة المالكة التي يهمها جدا أن يكون وريث عرش إنجلترا ذكرا.
Enormous relief. I felt the whole country was in labour with me. And enormous relief, but I had actually known William was going to be a boy because the scan had shown it, so of course no surprise. I came from a family where there were 4 of us, so we had enormous fun there. And then William and Harry arrived. Fortunately 2 boys. It would have been a little tricky if it had been 2 girls, but that in itself brings responsibilities of bringing them up. William's future being as it is, and Harry are sort of like a form of a backup in that aspect. Well, everybody was thrilled to bits. It had been quite a difficult pregnancy. I hadn't been very well throughout it. So by the time William arrived, there was great relief because it was all peaceful again, and I was well for a time. Then I was unwell with postnatal depression, which no one ever discusses postnatal depression. You have to read about it afterwards, and that in itself was a bit of a difficult time. You'd wake up in the morning feeling you didn't want to get out of bed, you felt misunderstood, and just very, very low in yourself.
وفي جميع الأحوال يمكن أن تحفز ولادة الطفل مشاعر متنوعة قوية، بدءا من الإثارة والفرح إلى الخوف والقلق، وربما أيضا الاكتئاب. واكتئاب ما بعد الولادة لا يعني خللا أو ضعفا في الشخصية، لكنه أحد مضاعفات الولادة. ومن المشاهير اللواتي عانين من ذلك أديل وسلين ديون وأنجلينا جولي. ولذا ليست ديانا وحدها التي خاضت تلك التجربة، رغم أنها تجربة مغايرة تماما لشخصيتها.
Yes, very much so. I've never had a depression in my life. But then when I analysed it, I could see that the changes I'd made in the last year had all caught up with me, and my body had said, we want a rest. I received a great deal of treatment, but I knew myself that actually what I needed was space and time to adapt to all the different roles that had come my way. I knew I could do it, but I needed people to be patient and give me the space to do it. Well, it was a very short space of time. In a space of a year, my whole life had changed, turned upside down, and it had its wonderful moments, but it also had challenging moments, and I could see where the rough edges needed to be smoothed. Well, maybe I was the first person ever to be in this family who ever had a depression or was ever openly tearful. And obviously that was daunting, because if you've never seen it before, how do you support it?
ومن البديهي أن يكون لذلك الاكتئاب تأثير على زواجها، ولكن المؤسف في الأمر أنه على ما يبدو لا زوجها الأمير تشارلز ولا العائلة المالكة البريطانية بأسرها كان لديهم أدنى قدر من الفهم حيال ذلك الأمر.
Well, it gave everybody a wonderful new label. It's Diana's unstable and Diana's mentally imbalanced. And unfortunately that seems to have stuck on and off over the years. I think people used it and it's stuck. When no one listens to you, or you feel no one's listening to you, all sorts of things start to happen. For instance, you have so much pain inside yourself that you try and hurt yourself on the outside because you want help, but it's the wrong help you're asking for. People see it as crying wolf or attention seeking, and they think because you're in the media all the time, you've got enough attention, inverted commas. But I was actually crying out because I wanted to get better in order to go forward and continue my duty and my role as wife, mother, Princess of Wales. So, yes, I did inflict upon myself. I didn't like myself. I was ashamed that I couldn't cope with the pressures. Well, I just hurt my arms and my legs. And I work in environments now where I see women doing similar things, and I'm able to understand completely where they're coming from.
ولذا كانت ردة فعل الأمير تشارلز تجاه تلك التجربة لا تختلف كثيرا عن ردة فعل أي شخص تجاه أمر لا يفقه عنه شيئا على الإطلاق.
But I didn't actually always do it in front of him. But obviously anyone who loves someone would be very concerned about it.
ولذا أيمكن تصور أنه تفهم وقتها ما تمر به زوجته ديانا من تجربة صعبة تماما.
No, but then not many people would have taken the time to see that.
على الرغم من ذلك، شعرت الأميرة ديانا بشكل أو بآخر أنها مضطرة إلى مواصلة القيام بدورها كأميرة ويلز، والمدهش أنها نجحت فعلا.
I felt compelled to perform. Well, when I say perform, I was compelled to go out and do my engagements and not let people down and support them and love them. And in a way, by being out in public, they supported me, although they weren't aware just how much healing they were giving me, and it carried me through.
But did you feel that you had to maintain the public image of a successful Princess of Wales?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
البوليميا أو الشره المرضي العصبي هو اضطراب يدفع المصاب إلى الإفراط في تناول الطعام ثم إلى التقيؤ، ويمكن أن يهدد حياته. ويرتبط البوليميا ارتباطا وثيقا بالمشكلات النفسية، فالمصابون بالشره يتملكهم شعور سلبي تجاه أنفسهم. ومن المشاهير اللواتي عانين من ذلك داليدا وجين فوندا وأنجلينا جولي. ولذا ليست ديانا وحدها التي خاضت تلك التجربة أيضا، ومع ذلك كانت العائلة المالكة تنظر لها وكأنها الوحيدة فعلا.
Yes, I did. I had bulimia for a number of years. And that's like a secret disease you inflict it upon yourself because your self-esteem is to low ebb and you don't think you're worthy or valuable. You fill your stomach up 4 or 5 times a day, some do it more, and it gives you a feeling of comfort. It's like having a pair of arms around you, but it's temporary. Then you are disgusted at the bloatedness of your stomach, and then you bring it all up again. And it's a repetitive pattern, which is very destructive to yourself. Depends on the pressures going on. if I'd been on what I call an away day, I'd been up part of the country all day, I'd come home feeling pretty empty because my engagements at that time would be to do with people dying, people very sick, people, marriage is the problem, all that, and I'd come home and it would be very difficult to know how to comfort myself, having been comforted lots of other people. So it would be a regular pattern to jump into the fridge. It was a symptom of what was going on in my marriage. I was crying out for help, but giving the wrong signals. And people were using my bulimia as a coat on a hanger. They decided that was the problem. Diana was unstable. The cause was a situation where my husband and I had to keep everything together because we didn't want to disappoint the public. And yet, obviously, there was a lot of anxiety going on within our four walls. But it was my escape mechanism, and it worked for me at that time.
ولذا يمكن تصور أنه كان بوسعها طلب المساعدة من زوجها أو من أحد أفراد العائلة المالكة الذين ليس لديهم أصلاً أدنى فكرة عن كونها تمر بمشكلة حقيقية تستلزم مد يد العون لها.
No. You have to know that when you have bulimia, you're very ashamed of yourself. And you hate yourself. So, and people think you're wasting food. So you don't discuss it with people. And the thing about bulimia is your weight always stays the same, whereas with anorexia you visibly shrink. So you can pretend the whole way through. There's no proof. Well, it was just, I suppose you're going to waste that food later on. You know, that was pressure in itself. And of course I would, because it was my release valve.
How long did this bulimia go on for?
A long time. But I'm free of it now.
2 years? 3 years?
A little bit more than that.
ومع تلك المعاناة كان الضغط الإعلامي مستمراً على الزوجين الملكيين وبالأخص الأميرة ديانا، وهو ما تسبب في بداية تصدع العلاقة الزوجية بين ديانا وتشارلز.
We were a newly married couple, so obviously we had those pressures too, and we had the media who were completely fascinated by everything we did, and it was difficult to share that load because I was the one who was always pitched out front, whether it's my clothes, what I said, what my hair was doing, everything. It was a pretty dull subject, actually, and it's been exhausted over the years. When actually what we wanted to support it was our work. And as a team, it made it very difficult because for a situation where there was a couple working in the same job, we got out the same car, shook the same hand, my husband did the speeches, I did the handshaking. So basically we were a married couple doing the same job, which is very difficult for anyone, and more so if you've got all the attention on you. We struggled a bit with it, it was very difficult. And then my husband decided that we'd do separate engagements, which was a bit sad for me, because I quite liked the company. But there again, I didn't have the choice.
So it wasn't at your request that you did that on your own?
Not at all, no.
وبالنظر إلى أن العائلة الملكية حصرت نظرتها بشأن ديانا في أنها فقط أم ورثة العرش في المستقبل وزوجة ولي العهد البريطاني، فهل كان لذلك التصدع في علاقتهما الزوجية سبب يتعلق بعدم وجود أي اهتمامات مشتركة بين الزوجين الملكيين؟
No, I think we had a great deal of interest. We both liked people, both liked country life, both loved children, work in the cancer field, work in hospices. But I was portrayed in the media at that time, if I remember rightly, as someone, because I hadn't passed any O-levels and taken any A-levels, I was stupid. And I made the grave mistake once of saying to a child I was thick as a plank in order to ease the child's nervousness, of which it did. But that headline went all around the world, and I rather regret saying it. I don't think I was allowed to have any. I think that I've always been the 18-year-old girl he got engaged to, so I don't think I've been given any credit for growth. And my goodness, I've had to grow. Well, anything good I ever did, nobody ever said a thing, never said well done or was it okay. But if I tripped up, which invariably I did, because I was new at the game, a ton of bricks came down on me. Well, obviously there were lots of tears, and one could dive into the bulimia and to escape. Well, we had unique pressures put upon us, and we both tried our hardest to cover them up, but obviously it wasn't to be.
اعتقدت ديانا ومن قبلها العائلة المالكة البريطانية أن تشارلز بمجرد زواجه منها قد طوى إلى الأبد صفحة علاقته غير المشروعة بالسيدة كاميلا باركر بولز، ولكن هل كانت ديانا على علم بأن ذلك غير صحيح على الإطلاق؟
Yes, I was. But I wasn't in a position to do anything about it.
What evidence did you have that their relationship was continuing even though you were married?
A woman's instinct is a very good one. Well, I had knowledge of it. Well, from people who minded and cared about our marriage. Pretty devastating. Rampant bulimia, if you can have rampant bulimia, and just a feeling of being no good at anything and being useless and hopeless and failed in every direction. Was a husband who loved someone else. I didn't think that, I knew it. By the change of behavioural pattern in my husband, for all sorts of reasons that a woman's instinct produces. You just know. It was already difficult, but it became increasingly difficult. But people were, when I say people, I mean friends on my husband's side were indicating that I was, again, unstable, sick, and should be put in a home of some sort in order to get better. I was almost an embarrassment. There's no better way to dismantle a personality than to isolate it.
So you were isolated?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
لذا فمن الواضح جدا أن كاميلا كانت تمثل عاملا رئيسيا في انهيار زواج الأميرة ديانا والأمير تشارلز.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. I think everybody was very anxious because they could see there were complications, but didn't want to interfere, but were there, made it known that they were there if required.
وبالنظر لذلك الوضع، فهل يمكن تصور أنه كان بوسع ديانا الحفاظ على زواجها، بينما فرضت عليها خيانة زوجها لها وعدم اهتمامه بأمرها أن تحيا حياتين متناقضتين تماما في آن معا، إحداهما في خصوصية بمعزل عن زوجها، والأخرى في علانية إلى جوار زوجها كأميرة ويلز؟
No, because again, the media was very interested about our setup, inverted commas, when we went abroad. We had separate apartments, albeit we were on the same floor, so of course that was leaked, and that caused complications. But Charles and I had our duty to perform, and that was paramount. A very good team in public, albeit what was going on in private, we were a good team.
في خطاب رسمي ألقته الملكة إليزابيث يوم 24 من نوفمبر تشرين الثاني عام 92 بمناسبة احتفالها باليوبيل الروبي على العرش، قالت فيه: عام 92 ليس العام الذي سأنظر فيه إلى الوراء بسرور خالص، لقد اتضح أنها سنة رهيبة، وهو نفس العام الذي اندلع فيه حريق كبير في قلعة ويندسور، أكبر قلعة مأهولة في العالم وواحدة من المساكن الرسمية للملك البريطاني، وهو أيضا العام الذي نشر فيه أندرو مارتن كتابه عن القصة الحقيقية للأميرة ديانا بكلماتها هي ذاتها، فكيف ساعدته ديانا في تأليف ذلك الكتاب؟
I never met him, no. A lot of people saw the distress that my life was in, and they felt it was a supportive thing to help in the way that they did. I was at the end of my tether. I was desperate. I think I was so fed up with being seen as someone who was a basket case, because I am a very strong person, and I know that causes complications in the system that I live in.
ولكن كيف بات يمكن لهذا الكتاب أن يغير شيئا أو يساهم في حل الأزمة التي كانت ديانا تمر بها؟
I don't know. Maybe people have a better understanding. Maybe there's a lot of women out there who suffer on the same level but in a different environment, who are unable to stand up for themselves because their self-esteem is cut into 2. I don't know.
إذن لابد وأنه كان لنشر هذا الكتاب تأثير واضح إلى حد ما على زوجها الأمير تشارلز والعائلة المالكة البريطانية.
I think they were shocked and horrified and very disappointed. Well, what had been hidden, or rather what we thought had been hidden, then became out in the open and was spoken about on a daily basis. And the pressure was for us to sort ourselves out in some way. Were we going to stay together or were we going to separate? And the words separation and divorce kept coming up in the media on a daily basis. Well, we struggled along. We did our engagements together, and in our private life it was obviously turbulent.
Did things come to a head?
Yes, slowly, yes. My husband and I, we discussed it very calmly. We could see what the public were requiring. They wanted clarity of a situation that was obviously becoming intolerable. So we got the lawyers together, we discussed separation. Obviously there were a lot of people to discuss it with, Prime Minister, Her Majesty. And then it moved itself, so to speak.
وبحلول ديسمبر كانون الأول عام 92 جرى الاتفاق بين الزوجين الملكيين على الانفصال الودي، ولذا أعلن رئيس الوزراء البريطاني جون ميجر عن ذلك الطلاق الودي أمام مجلس العموم البريطاني، وبلا شك كان لذلك بالغ الأثر النفسي السلبي على الأميرة ديانا.
Deep, profound sadness. So we had struggled to keep it going, but obviously we both run out of steam. And in a way, I suppose it could have been a relief for us both that we'd finally made our minds up. But my husband asked for separation and I supported it.
It's not your idea?
No, not at all. I come from a divorce background and I didn't want to go into that one again.
إذا أعجبك الفيديو لا تنسى الإعجاب والاشتراك بالقناة وتفعيل جرس الإشعارات ليصلك كل جديد.